Right.
How do you not stay angry? How do you not get angry? How do you stay calm?
Good. So there's a lot to unpack there. But first is that the apex of emotional health is to recognize that people have different perspectives. It doesn't mean right and wrong. It just means that you see things differently. And in the healthiest relationship, and certainly with the healthiest person, you recognize that even though you see one thing, I see something else, it doesn't make one of us bad. In other words, the old days when we disagreed politically, it was, we would see things differently. I see one thing, you see the other, but we'd still conduct ourselves cordially. And then this is a reflection of society at large too. And then it sort of shifted to, it's not just our perspective, but I'm right and you're wrong. And then right now it's not just I'm right and you're wrong, but I'm good and you're bad. Right? Meaning if you hold this opinion, then you're not a good person, right? Which is, maybe there are some opinions that we could say this person is morally bankrupt, but, the ability to be able to recognize that I see things one way, you see them a different way, it doesn't necessarily mean that one of us is good or bad, and certainly not right or wrong, which comes a lot into validation and, in relationships, and, this comes up in any interpersonal relationship. Very often we don't want to validate because I don't want to give into the mishigash, give into the craziness and say, you know what, I'm validating a perspective that's crazy, or I'm enabling it, big buzzword. But validation has nothing to do with right and wrong or the facts. Validation simply means is I get why you're in pain based on your perspective, right? A small child comes to you, your kid comes to you because his car broke. You really going to tell him that it's just a toy car? What are you making a big deal about it, right? Because the Lamaisa is, your real car breaks, you'll get upset. Do you want someone coming to you and say, Momo, come on, it's just a car? If you've got a healthier perspective, you recognize it is just a car. But in the moment, to you, it's very important. So being able to validate just means that you're acknowledging this person's experience. Yeah. So I'm going to save you $21.95 in terms of anger, and you asked for tips. So first off, it's to recognize that people have different perspectives, but easier said than done. The genesis of anger is going to be fear. When we become scared, we're going to become angry. There's not a situation where you trip over a chair or someone disagrees with something you say. What happens is that conversation with somebody, they don't see things your way. I get angry. It's counterproductive, right? No one ever walked away from a conversation and said, I wish I would have gotten angrier. I would have been able to handle myself so much better, right? It clouds our ability to see clearly. It inhibits our objectivity and rationality. So what happens is the reason we become angry is because we're scared. Now, rather than feel that fear, anger serves as a mask. Because fear, being scared, is very unsettling. But you become angry. You've got neurotransmitters, hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, everything surging through. It masks and channels away that feeling of vulnerability into a feeling of power. But that's the Yetzer Hara, that's the ego. The truth is, with each anger-driven moment, we become less in control and more scared. So, Shlomo HaMelech says, the English is that anger rests in the bosom of fools. So a person who's angry always has it ready here to unload. So I think one fabulous technique, something that I've done myself, is to take anger off the table completely. Meaning that in any situation, if you're going to take anger and you keep it here, ready to pull out when it's warranted, you'll pull it out at the wrong times, because when your ego's engaged, perspective narrows, you don't see clearly. But if you take it off the table completely, it's not like you're benching and the kids are doing something. There's only times you can say no before you're no longer benching, right? So you pretend like there's no way that you can interact with this person, because here's the thing. There's no techacha, there's no advice, there's no chinuch that you can give over in a way that's not calm that will be effective. If you can't say it calmly, then you're going to be ineffective. So don't say it at all. Wait until you have your moment. Is it possible 1 in a billion times your moment will pass, or you should have gotten angry? And Rambam explains there's certain times it's warranted and so on. External display. There are caveats there. But if you take it off the table completely, you're going to find that you're just unable to pull out that quill. And over time, it becomes your second nature. It's a phenomenal technique.
Well, is there ever a time when someone should get angry? Because the title is Never Get Angry Again, but there are some things that are incredulous.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the Rambam talks about times where it's necessary to become angry, not just display anger. Your child runs into the street. Yes, you want to display anger, but there are times when you should manifest anger. But those are few and far between. And also, this happens to be a mainstream book. It's not. If it were a book written for the Jewish market, I would have put in those qualifications.
It's very interesting, but that really talks about let's say myself taking anger off the table, but. Right. But what can you do about the person you're sitting across from when they have anger on the table? How do you converse with somebody
Good.
who is angry and is always angry.
In the face of anger.
Great. I'll tell you what doesn't work. We'll start with that.
Sure.
Never say, calm down. Right?
Darn.
How well does that work for you? You're married, right? In other words, no one ever said to you, calm down or don't worry. And you go, oh, I feel so much better, right? Because what happens? You tell someone to calm down. If you understand that the genesis of anger is fear or loss of control, now you're telling them exactly how to feel. You want to take away their last vestige of power by telling them how to feel and calm down. That's why it's not productive. What you want to do, two things. Number one is empathize. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is your pain is my pain. If someone's upset, keep your mouth closed and just have your non-physical reflecting back congruent with their pain. It's very cathartic.
What does that mean?
Meaning that if they are, you ever have a conversation with somebody and you're talking about something that's really troubling you, very upsetting, and they're like, oh, wow, Nachi, that really seems like a talk. You're like, they're just missing it, right?
Yeah.
So
every day.
Yeah. Okay. Right. He's got lots to add. I'm sure here.
I got you a book for.
He's pointing to Nissen, not to me, by the way.
Yeah.
For anyone that's listening.
He's a redhead.
Yeah. Giving into the stereotypes.
Oh yeah. Leaning in.
So yeah, you want to be able to express how they're feeling in your nonverbal. So what does it mean? It means if they're in pain, you have that consternation, that sadness on your face too. It has to be congruent. And then validation, again, validation doesn't mean, we jump in with solutions or we try to minimize, which is even worse. We say, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Rather than establish connection through validation by letting them know you understand their pain, you minimize it. And that's what we so often do with our spouse, with our children. They're going through something. Oh, it's not a big deal. That's not what they want to hear. Now, it may not be a big deal, and you want to offer them an alternate perspective, but there's no way you're going to get them to take off their glasses and put on yours and see more clearly while they're holding tightly to theirs. They're only going to hold tightly to theirs while they're defending their position. The minute, Momo, I tell you, you know what? I understand why this is so painful for you. You let down your shield. Okay, great. I don't have to sell him anymore. Now I can move in and I can help you to look at things differently. But up until the point I'm arguing with you, you're defending your position. Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. But how do you do that without sounding, I guess, superficial? Like someone's like, oh, I'm so upset. This person just like, let's say something that you don't like really you want to say is calm down, right? It's because you're not really vibing with it. Good. Like this person coming off. Oh my gosh, no way. That's so not nice of them. It sounds really like.
Well, if you sound like a Valley girl, maybe. But I'm not sure.
Like a what?
A Valley girl. You're like, oh my gosh.
You're from the Valley, no?
I'm not.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about, yeah?
I do.
Yeah. So if you're going to sound like this, it's going to be inauthentic. But
how are you supposed to sound when it's something you don't really care about?
Because there are times when you are angry about something that deep down inside is absolutely ridiculous. You're blowing out of proportion. You don't want your wife to give you the MS. You want her to say, Nachi, I could see this is difficult. Now, she's not saying she agrees. But based on your perspective, if you had this experience, she can see, and it's not about being inauthentic. She's saying, I can see, again, if she walked through your lens, had your life, your experiences, your issues, your stuff, she would draw the same conclusion. So she's not saying, I agree. That would be inauthentic, right? We want to definitely be authentic. But when you're in that space, it is counterproductive to tell the person what they're feeling is illegitimate. Mm-hmm. It's not real.
I also find that when someone is so affected by the person that cuts them off or by the thing that when you hear it, you're like, really? What that typically means is that there's something going on in their life or something that they're experiencing and that they're feeling that a simple cutoff on the road will trigger that and reveal pain that they're experiencing. And you can be sympathetic or empathetic rather to what's actually going on, whether they're sharing that with you right now or whether they're not.
Yeah. Look, what happens, anyone who's listened to my talks are going to roll their eyes when I give this example because I'll put it in anywhere I can find. But the example that I always give is, you're driving along, someone cuts you off on the road. What's going to bother you more? A little old lady driving like this, right, on the way to her own Levaya, or a young guy driving with the beer bottle in one hand, cigarette in the other? Right? Who's going to bother you more?
The guy. Yeah.
The guy, because we assume the little lady probably didn't see it. We don't take it personally. We assume the young guy did it to me on purpose. Yeah, I'm going to save you, by the way, 25 years of therapy. Yeah, I know. You're thinking, where were you 25 years ago, right? But something happens, you take it personally, you get upset. Something happens, you don't take it personally, you don't get upset. That's it, guys. That is in a nutshell.
Don't take it personal.
Now, it's very easier said than done. We have to understand what part of us takes it personally. It's a heart, it's the ego, it's a false self. There's a whole process to understanding. End of the day, that's going to be the end result. If I focus in on my pain rather than yours, I'm not able to empathize, right? And I'm behind the eight ball. Of course, I'm going to get angry. We're in a conversation. You're mean. You're bombastic. You're yelling. You're spewing a lot of stuff. If I'm focusing on my pain, I'm fighting against my own nature, not get upset. If I'm focusing on yours, right? Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that you had 100% perfect self-esteem, right? Like me, right? And you're in a conversation with somebody who's rude to you. What is your singular and sole thought?
I feel bad for this person.
Great. How much pain must this person be in to treat someone as amazing as me like this, right? Your focus isn't on yourself. You have complete empathy, connection. But as long as you're I-focused, now, what engages the ego? It's a lack of self-esteem. And again, that takes us into 5 hours. But Lamaisa, that is the end objective, is to take the false self out of the way.
Mm-hmm. The example I use, it's similar to your example with the car and the two drivers, is if you're at a red light, for example, and your light turns green, and you're ready to go, and all of a sudden someone starts crossing right in front of you,
right?
And all of a sudden resentment is triggered, right? What's this guy doing walking in front of my car? I have a green light, right? And then you look a little closer and you notice that it's someone who is not well,
right?
And as soon as that compassion for that person, you don't hold it against that person, that the person's crossing the light, they're unaware of what's going on. It's much easier to not take it personally and to not take it out on that person.
That's right. So what happens? Let's take a step back, just understand that dynamic. It's not what happens that gets us upset. It's the meaning we attach to it. And that meaning is based on how I feel about me. If this person's walking in front because they don't care about me, they don't respect me, they're on the phone, and so on, it's easier to get upset because you're ascribing a malevolent motivation. But if I recognize that somebody who's, handicapped or can't get by, or they're just emotionally unwell, I'm attaching a different meaning. So we assume it's because someone crosses in front of our car that's why we're upset. It's not. In any interaction, any situation, you're not upset because of what the person does. You're upset because of the meaning you attach to it. You change the meaning, you're going to change your response.
Wow. So it's like, this person is driving so slow in front of me, they don't value my time. I'm going to be late.
That's right.
You think that, right. That's incredible. Speaking of just chinuch for a second, it dawned upon me that you grew up in Roslyn and now you live in Lakewood.
Yeah.
What's that like? Like, what's that?
We've been there 20 years. So, all my kids pretty much, have grown up there, and it's fabulous. People are quick to, put different communities into different categories. Mm-hmm. I love it. I think there's so much good there. There's so much beauty there. It's obviously, different than Roslyn. It's different than a lot of places. But there's an authenticity with a lot of people. And I think it's just extraordinary.
Someone that you grew up near that I was speaking to before we went on camera is Rabbi D Trink.
Yeah.
Anytime we have an opportunity to speak of Rabbi Trink on this podcast,
gotta take it.
We gotta take it. And I was mentioning briefly that the last time I visited Rabbi Trink, I actually brought him the book that put out with Art Scroll, a Meaningful Minute book. I brought it to his house, and obviously at that point he wasn't doing so well. But I went to visit him in the Rabbit's Inn, and after that I went to your house. You live on a big hill. Yeah. Front lawn is like. Your address is.
I was going to say, you want to give my address? Yeah.
Anyways, what's do you have any stories that Rabbi D Trink?
So he was so extra. There was such an authenticity. I know you had.
Speaking of never get angry, right?
Oh my gosh, goodness! I remember I was visiting him one time, and I used to speak for his boys at the yeshiva, and he was 2 blocks away, and I remember speaking one time. There's a story actually written up about where a boy had punched him several times in his mouth, and he had his jaw wired shut and so on. He brought that boy to me right then. And his focus wasn't on himself. It was on just the boy should be okay and not feel bad.
And he was like messed up. He was bleeding.
It was. I mean, he walked down 2 blocks to my house, and he's like, we need some help, not him. He's not calling Hatzalah. He's focusing on the boy. But I remember speaking with this Rebbitzin. Wow. The 3 of us are talking. My brother was there, and Rabbi Trink, and she said, probably, I don't know if she told the story when she was here, but for the first, 20 years of their marriage, she said she always thought that they had just the most amazing, great boys in the house. She didn't realize exactly, where they were coming from.
Or what the world thought of them.
Or what the world thought of them. Because he would always say, Leah, we're having an amazing boy. So she said when they would come up and they'd ask for something, milchik, even though they had fleshik, she'd assume that they just forgot. It wasn't even 20 years of marriage. And again, if I'm misquoting this, I'm sure she'll let me know. 20 years of marriage, again, and not because you can't do that if you're faking it and you really think one thing. He only saw the good. And as an extension of that, she only saw the good. And he was able to do things. I mean, he's told me story after story after story. There was one boy who was kicked out of yeshiva after yeshiva after yeshiva. And by him, every hour in the hour, he said, so-and-so, go run around the yeshiva. It could be rainy, it could be snowing, could be 100, doesn't matter. He needed to get his energy. Today, I'm obviously not going to say who he is, where he is, but let's just say he's a very productive member of society that was kicked out of yeshiva after yeshiva after yeshiva. He was just able to relate to these boys and only see the good.
Wow.
And I think his kids, it even extended to his kids where people would talk about the kids at Adelphia and his kids would be like, they're talking about my father's Talmidim. Right. My father has the best Talmidim. Like they didn't understand.
Yeah.
And I read the book, Just Love Them. And I interviewed Mrs. Rebbitzin Trink and everything. Is it possible for someone to become like our David Trink? Is it possible to be like that?
I'll quote the Rebbitzin. He wasn't born this way. That's her exact words. And she said it on this because I watched it. She said the word she was used funny. She said he was born normal. That's what she said. And I remember he was born like regular and worked on himself to only see. Like, imagine just the quality of relationship that you have, and also the quality of life that you have when you only see the good. It can be selfish because you move in a different space when you only focus then on the good. He's the best.
You think that's reachable?
Absolutely.
It's pretty incredible.
It's a big avodah.
Yeah. What are you working on now?
I just finished a book on B'tachon.
Nice. That's different for you. Yeah. It's like a different realm.
So, I mean, I've written on Bechira.
Yeah. And, free choice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't written on B'tachon before. Sponsorship opportunities are available. How'd that slip out?
Found with family.
What's that?
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah.
They'll hear it.
Yeah. I just finished a book on B'tachon, but it's interesting. It doesn't have a single story. Not a single story. It's not a inspirational or motivation. It's all about the logic about how we acquire trust in Hashem.
How we like
the gateway. In other words, what methodically the process to do it. And again, B'dafka, not a single story.
When's that coming out?
It's like an instruction.
That's awesome.
Right. I mean, obviously well sourced with Chazal, but it's not inspiring insofar as motivational and story. It's inspiring, I think, because you have access to learn exactly what it is you need to do in order to achieve this level of tranquility, as Shtar B'tachon explains. So it's like a roadmap, but it is,
There's probably no books on B'tachon that don't have stories.
Right. Amir Hashem, this will be the first. And so when is it coming out? Right now it's editing. So I would like to think in 4 or 5 months.
Incredible. Well, everyone can find that at their local Judaica stores or on davidlieberman.com. Is that a thing? Not yet?
No, I have a website, but I'm not even sure what it is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just Google David Lieberman.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, that's a pretty common name.
I think there's like a plastic surgeon or with that same name. So I get some of his calls. I wonder how many of mine he gets.
That's fascinating. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your insight.
You guys are mamish fantastic. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you.